Hello, namaskar. It's about 3 p.m. now. It's Thursday, December the 11th. I fasted yesterday, it's the 10th, so today's the 11th. I'm studying a little bit of pathology. It's a new field I'm reading about. It's not long ago I used to have friends who could have teach you these subjects, many subjects in the intellectual sphere. Like Admats, I had a friend from Queen's College. His name was Parmanand Patran. We used to call him Duki from Belladam. He was actually the brother of Ganesh, the storekeeper from Best Hospital, West Namrar Hospital. His brother's son, Duki, was the brother of Ganesh. Ganesh, the storekeeper, had A levels, and he was working as a storekeeper at West Ham Hospital. Later, when I went there to work, he left and he got some big job outside of the government system they give him and so on. So I heard story that sometimes he would cry on the job, people would interfere with him and trouble him, and he would cry sometimes, the maids, the staff of the hospital. So this is it when you get too close to people and too familiar, love cannot find the proper outlet and direction. It needs the proper recipient. If it doesn't have the recipient, what will happen? So that's why you find yourself sometimes attracted to people, just because these people might have some qualities that you do not have and you want that quality. So this love might be expressed on the physical realm as touch, as taste. Because you're a physical man, you communicate through the physical senses, through your physical amenities, what you have, your faculties that you have. But people who are intellectual, they can communicate in other ways. They are sensitive to other delicate facts and delicate mechanism of wireless communication. Today we have so many physical means, the means to communicate and get to each other, to get to know things. So much through many apparatus like the mobile phone, given by the recent guy who passed. What his name again? And then you have Facebook, you have the social media. People have so many physical ways of communicating, But they say the yogis, there's another way of communication. You communicate through spirit. The spirit knows no mind, it knows no sight, it knows no body. It's a spirit body, a spirit. In fact, people say that before we become humans, we were once spirits also, you know that? People are saying like this, that we were all spirits, ghosts wandering, waiting for a body. I heard a story from the Acharyas, the old Margis, Acharyas, Margis and Anandamarg. This is sometime when the Guru is giving pravachans or discourses and lectures. The Marga Guru, the Tantrik master, he would look up and he would be making gestures, mudras, transmitting energy and communicating in another way. So these mudras and this way of symbols, they are a way of expressing, transmitting energy. They've been used all times in India by the saints, by the gurus. Even Jesus, they said, was using these mudras and so on. In another mark, they use mudra. And if you read the devotional books, the Margis and the Dadas, they often tell of Baba. You go to CMUs displaying mudras, and this can take the mind up right away. They say the mudras can give you liberation. If you use them, practice them properly for a long time, your body starts to change, your mind starts to change, everything just starts changing, So these are all science, great science there. So suddenly you meet somebody who has occult development, psychic development, spiritual development. You're drawn to that person, you want the same thing. If you're of a highly intellectual person, you might be drawn to a spiritual person. Because from the intellect, there's a transition to spiritual. So people who are very intuitive, very intellectual, there's a thin line between the intuition and the spirit. So they intellectually intuit, intellectually feel that there is something beyond. And often they get inspirations, they get visions, they get thoughts coming from the higher planes, the spirit planes and so on. So people who are receptive to the occult, to the spiritual level, they can get insight to bring into society in the physical plane. This kind of communications people refer to sometimes as clairaudience, sometimes as spirit messages, or sometimes as divine inspiration in dreams. Like Mendeleev, he was a Catholic monk, and he wrote out the entire periodic table of elements, organic elements, inorganic elements, the noble gases, and so on. He figured out all of this one day in a dream, and he was a monk, who was into agriculture and these kind of things and doing his own kind of work. One night, he dreamt about the elements and started to write it out. And to the people, scientists, this is the foundation for science, the periodic table of elements. So once the mind is prepared that it can feel and sense things in the higher plane, it can bring down divine music, it can bring down a lot of things for humanity and society. So oftentimes we are attracted with people who are developed intellectually. I remember as a young boy, I was very attracted to like the Western girls or people who are very intellectual, But as my mind started to move up higher, I understand that I wanted mental development, intellectual development. And I was looking at those qualities because I wanted them for myself. I wanted more intellect. I wanted these people who are having, like, for example, highly intellectual people. I was attracted because I wanted to know how I can get those qualities, But after my mind solved that, I transition it. So often in families, if you don't pray together, meditate together, belong to the same sect or group together, you might outgrow each other. Because you pass the physical. What brought you together in the first place is samskaras. You want something from her, she wants something from you. It's not always sexual. It might be some physical attribute, and you just transmit those qualities through touch, taste, through the Kama Sutras and so on. That's the Indian method of copulation, and for married people that they use, But people who remain celibate and single, they are usually given to a lot of thought and psychic powers and so on, But oftentimes the society don't recognize their effort or their struggle for an establishment in the higher planes of thoughts and so on. So what we have happening is that people are constantly evolving, they're constantly growing, maturing. So what might attract you in the past may not do so in another couple of years, 3-4 years, you outgrow it. It doesn't affect you anymore. For example, in my childhood, I was going to the Indians College. My benchmate was a Portuguese girl, and we were very close friends. The young lady was giving me a lot of books to read, but probably I wanted something more physical. The books don't satisfy you. The intellectual stimulation from the intellectual plane, you cannot receive it, So what happens is that the physical is always struggling for an explosion or an implosion into the inner space of the intellect and the spirit. And there are teachers and people who are qualified to go down to these levels, to the base levels, and elevate the mind up to the intellect and to the spirit and so on. This example is very popular in the Tantrik cult. In fact, it's called the Panchamakara Tantra, where they use wine, sex, flesh, and mudra. The 5 M's. Mudra, Mamsa, Matsa, Maichunya, and I can't remember the other one. purify them, called the Panchamakara Tantra. They use this to transcend it. You know, for in the beginning, the woman becomes a means of enjoyment, but in the afterwards, she can take you to see her as a divine. So through the loss is gradually transmuted and trained and pulled up to the divine level so that you can appreciate the divine. And this is what happened with most people in the Caribbean. They're attracted to the intellect and so on. And there are teachers who train the mind, groom the mind, prepare the mind. So when you're in the intellectual stage, you can then feel the spirit. So that person who is taken by a school in the West, like science or the arts or business, one day they just disappear and they come back. You can't communicate with a person, you cannot mesh with them, so they become lost to the family, to the origin where they came from, and so on. So many people who are already there in the spiritual and they do not know how to come down to the intellect, then don't even want to come down to the physical. So much grossness. The physical is such a wide field and such a great field. We can look around you and see the richness of the physical level, the physical plane. It's all around you. Look at the marvels of technology. It's in the physical field. And the mental field is even more greater also. They are more attractive and wonderful thing. If you get a mental friend, a friend who's at a mental level, you're enamored, you're enchanted, you're captivated by your intellectual friend. While the intellectual friend is captivated by the spiritual friend, she or he wants spiritual attributes to escape the pull from the physical that is trying to become the intellectual, and so on. So the story with Babel looking up like this and making mudras up there, the Margis explained that he was seeing beings from other dimension who want to go higher, and they were attracted to him, and they come there in the invisible form and they were hovering at the top, listening to his discourses. Well, these are all different stories and mysteries that you have to listen. Katas, they call it in the East and Asia. Kata. Kata, a Ramayan kata or a Mahabharat kata, or a kata from the Devi Puran or from the Tantras, and so these are all kata stories, and you learn a lot of things when these teachers, they come down from the Himalayas and the jungles and the caves of Hindustan to come down to the plain and meet with struggling humanity and share their knowledge and realization. It's a wonderful thing. We do hope that the Caribbean can gradually transmute their physical to an intellectual composure or intellectual state of being. From there they'll be able to decipher things from the spiritual plane and so on. Messages will come to them. How it doesn't come, not people talking and to you and you hearing voices. It might be schizophrenia or madness also. You hear voices in your head. There's many cases like that. Is madness. So the best thing is to be prepared by teachers. If you're in the intellectual part, you're going along chemistry, biology, medicine. People take refuge in those departments of sciences, and they become officers or gatekeepers, sentries in those sciences, in the Western parlance, as the Western or the Eastern, wherever science started first and it gradually spread around the world. Science has roots in Asia also, mathematics and all these things. Had Asian people, even African mathematicians, geniuses and so on. So what we have happening is that all nations who had received inspiration and knowledge for future humanity, they can probably leave methodology and signposts and signs that we can use to disappear from the crowd underneath us. We become so much mud and dirt and things on our skin and clothes from interaction, social interaction. People can save you in various departments. There are biological masters, chemistry masters, physics masters who can save you, take you, help to brush off some of those dirt. But you could only become a Dagda Bija, a born seed as they call it, when the guru or the master comes himself and find those people who are ready, already there to just want this Midas touch, and they call the dirt clean off that they accumulate, that they pick up on the way, So those are some of the stories I heard over my years of following, pursuing, reading, listening to lectures, attending lectures at various hotels and visits and seminars, gathers, retreats, and so I'm passing this on, hopefully it touches somebody or someone one day and it helps to open up the portal to better things. So in the meanwhile, I ask you to be cautious and kind and gentler to your fellows, because one day that fellow might be transmuting his physical into intellectual and his intellectual into spiritual by teachers, by caretakers who pass through the same avenues as they did, the same gateways as they did. So those teachers are there looking for people like themselves and are pulling them. So each person, they say, have a guide, an angel, a guide, a well-wisher, and people who are looking and willing to help and so on. So let's have a blessed journey through this earth plane. I do hope our leaders and our people will be stimulated more by this spiritual knowledge, and they will reach up there one day and be inspired and see the next step from where they are. People are so intellectual, so clever, so sharp from previous incarnations, from experience accumulated, that they are now ready to move on to the higher stage, whichever department you are in, whether it's theology, law, or medicine. The Student Companions, our book that we study for common entrance, it tells there are three great fields in life: medicine, theology, and law. And from these, all others are subordinated and probably fall within these three, For example, law. It uses the Bible, the Quran, the Ramayana when you go to swear in court and so on. So there's a borrowing from each other, The laws were given by Moses for humanity. And if you don't follow those laws, you might find yourself going off into another dimension. Though Aristotle and other great philosophers said, a man who becomes free from these laws is one who has already exceeded the laws. He's going beyond them. Like the Buddha said, gate gate, paragate, param gate, parasam gate, bodhi swaha. Means go beyond. But how can you go beyond? There are planes that are dangerous, spirits, elementals and forces. So you have to have a teacher. But to find a proper teacher and a good teacher, people are giving millions. People are losing millions, building church and contributions and all these things coming from all around the world, only to find that the teachers are fake in the end. He's led millions, the biggest con artists in history. Like the same Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. You check on YouTube, the great transcendental meditation, now people are realizing that he was just an ordinary fakir that was teaching a part, just a spark, a flint of Indian culture, and he made a name for himself. Another teacher I heard who was a cook in Swami Sivananda's ashram, and what he learned here in those kitchens, he took out and became a great messenger, an apostle in the Western world and the other parts that do not have spiritual knowledge. So when the Europeans take their, or the Western people bring their advanced technology to the East and Asia, people also call them white gods and all these kind of things. So people are enamored, and the whole creation is such a wonderful interplay of physical, mental, and spiritual panoramas, feel, like one physicist said, the entire creation is made up of energy. Pulsating quasars of energy, the dance of energy, the dance of Shiva. So let's find ourselves somewhere in this field, and if you go into the portals of your intellect or spirit, you might find yourself as a guard, a sentry, either as a clerk or a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer. These are all sentries, position of sentries in that dimension or portal. It's better you start young like me. I started exploring in the medical field. At a very young age, some of my family and relatives are in the medical field. So I already had that samskaras, or my soul was probably attracted there. I don't know why, but probably lack of teachers, lack of people with intuition to guide and so on. You know, you find yourself as a sentry somewhere along the road to perfection, you know, a sentry or a guard or a gatekeeper somewhere along the way. But let's hope that the right teacher will find the right student and make the proper and right specialist, the right doctor, the right clergyman, or whoever will find that his job and his duty will be revealed one day. Thanking you in the name of Ram, Krishna, Jesus, Yeshua, Moses, Allah, etc., etc. Namaskar. Hail Selassie.